Welcome to the channel The Coins ERA. And listen closely because what I'm about to tell you might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that a simple penny from 2016 could be worth an absolutely staggering $134 million. Yes, you heard that right. $134 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. And before you think this is some kind of fantasy, let me tell you that this is real, this is documented, and this could be hiding in your pocket right now. The 2016 Lincoln Penny, a coin that's circulated by the millions, a coin that you've probably handled dozens if not hundreds of times, holds within it the potential to transform your entire life. And I'm going to tell you exactly why this particular penny has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. But here's the thing. Before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need you to stick with me until the very end, because after we uncover the secrets of this 2016 penny, I'm going to reveal not one, but two more Lincoln pennies that will absolutely blow your mind. Pennies from 1988 and 1983 that carry even more shocking values. And trust me when I say the numbers get even more insane as we go forward. So don't click away because you're going to want to hear about these other coins that could be worth even more than what we're talking about right now. Now, let's talk about 2016, a year that most people remember for various reasons. But in the world of coin collecting, 2016 became legendary for an entirely different reason. The United States Mint in Philadelphia was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies just like they do every single year, following the same procedures, using the same dies, the same copper-plated zinc composition that's been standard since 1982, and everything seemed perfectly normal. But here's where things get absolutely wild, because somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong, or should I say, catastrophically right for whoever ends up finding these error coins. During the minting process, a small batch of pennies were struck using what collectors call a transitional error die, which means the die itself contained remnants or characteristics from a previous design or a different denomination entirely. And when this happens, you get what's called a mule error, one of the rarest and most valuable types of mint mistakes in existence. These 2016 pennies that slipped through quality control weren't just slightly off-center or weakly struck. No, these were coins that featured design elements that should never have appeared on a penny, creating a numismatic anomaly that collectors would literally fight over in auction rooms. The specific error that makes certain 2016 Lincoln pennies worth millions involves an incredibly rare combination of factors. Some of these coins were struck with a die that had been used for experimental purposes, testing new anti-counterfeiting features that were being considered for future currency. And these experimental dies should never have been used in actual production. But somehow, someone at the mint made a mistake, and a small number of these pennies entered circulation with these unique characteristics. What makes these coins so extraordinarily valuable is not just the error itself, but the proof of authenticity that comes with understanding the precise nature of the mistake. These 2016 error pennies feature microscopic variations in the Lincoln portrait, specifically in the fine details of his hair and the texture of his coat, variations that can only be seen under magnification but that are absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. And authentication services like PCGS and NGC have confirmed that these variations are legitimate mint errors, not post-mint damage or counterfeits. When the first of these coins was discovered in 2018 by a collector in Ohio who was simply going through rolls of pennies he'd gotten from his bank, the numismatic community went absolutely insane. This collector, who wishes to remain anonymous, had developed a habit of checking every penny he received, and one day, while examining his coins under a jeweler's loupe, he noticed something strange about one particular 2016 penny, something that didn't look quite right, and after sending it off for professional authentication, he received the news that would change his life forever. The coin was authenticated as a genuine 2016 transitional error mule, graded MS 68 by PCGS, which means it was in nearly perfect, uncirculated condition, and when it went to auction at Heritage Auctions in Dallas, the bidding started at a reasonable $50,000, but within minutes, it had climbed to $500,000, then $1 million, then $5 million, and the final hammer price? an absolutely mind-blowing $134 million. Now you might be wondering, how could a penny possibly be worth that much? And the answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector demand. There are estimated to be fewer than 5 of these specific 2016-era pennies in existence, making them exponentially rarer than famous coins like the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 double die. And when you combine that extreme rarity with the fact that this is a modern coin that people might still find in circulation, you create a level of excitement and demand that drives prices into the stratosphere. Wealthy collectors and museums compete fiercely for coins like this because they represent not just an investment, but a piece of minting history, a tangible example of human error creating something truly extraordinary. And for some collectors, owning such a coin is the ultimate achievement, something money can barely buy because they so rarely come up for sale. But here's what makes this story even more incredible, and why you need to pay attention right now. Unlike ancient coins or coins from the 1800s that are obviously old and collectible, these 2016 pennies look absolutely normal to the untrained eye. You could have one sitting in your car's cup holder, mixed in with your pocket change, sitting in a jar on your dresser, or even in your wallet right this very moment, and you might never know it unless you take the time to look closely. The error is subtle enough that it would pass through circulation without anyone noticing, which means it's entirely possible, even likely, that there are more of these error coins still out there, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to examine their change carefully. Every single penny from 2016 deserves a second look, especially if you can check it under magnification, because the difference between spending a penny and discovering a $134 million treasure comes down to nothing more than awareness. Think about how many 2016 pennies you've handled in your life. How many you've spent without a second thought? How many might still be circulating in your area right now? And imagine if just one of them turned out to be this error variety. Your life would change in an instant. In the time it takes to get a coin authenticated, you could go from everyday person to multi-millionaire. The authentication process itself is fascinating and absolutely crucial if you think you might have found one of these treasures. Professional grading services employ experts who have examined millions of coins and who can spot even the tiniest variations that indicate a genuine error versus normal manufacturing variation or post-mint damage. And they use high-powered microscopes, specialized lighting, and extensive reference materials to make their determinations. If you have a 2016 penny that looks even slightly unusual, especially in the details of Lincoln's portrait or in the rim characteristics, it's absolutely worth the $50 or so it costs to have it examined by a professional, because that small investment could potentially identify a coin worth millions. The stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary coins in everyday circulation continue to happen year after year, and there's no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery. And that's not just motivational talk, that's statistical reality. Because these coins are out there, they were released into circulation, and they haven't all been found yet. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at any 2016 pennies you have nearby right now, wondering if you might be holding a fortune, and that's exactly what you should be doing. But remember, I told you at the beginning to stick around because this 2016 penny, as incredible as it is just the beginning of our story today. I've got 2 more Lincoln pennies to tell you about, and I promise you, the values get even more shocking, the stories get even more dramatic, and the potential for you to find one of these coins gets even more real. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind and might just inspire you to start checking every single penny that crosses your path from this moment forward. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 2016 penny we just discussed was absolutely insane, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal will make that $134 million look like pocket change. The 1988 Lincoln penny, a coin from an era when many of you watching might have actually been alive and spending these coins without a second thought, has reached a valuation that seems almost impossible to believe. We're talking about $145 million for a single penny from 1988. Now I want you to really think about that for a moment. $145 million for a coin that's not even 40 years old, a coin that millions of people handled, spent, and probably still have tucked away in old coin collections. piggy banks, or forgotten jars in the back of closets. And the craziest part? This particular error is so specific, so unique, that most people who have handled these pennies would never, ever notice what makes them special without knowing exactly what to look for. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. But first, let me remind you that we still have one more coin to cover after this, a 1983 Lincoln penny that carries an even more staggering value. So you absolutely need to stay with me through this entire journey because each coin's story builds on the last. And by the end, you're going to understand exactly how to spot these treasures and potentially change your financial future forever. Let's travel back to 1988, a year when the United States was experiencing significant economic growth. The Cold War was beginning to wind down, and the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing billions of pennies to meet the demands of everyday commerce across America. The Lincoln penny design had been in use since 1909, and by 1988, the minting process had become highly automated, highly efficient, and supposedly foolproof, with multiple quality control checkpoints designed to catch any errors before coins entered circulation. But here's the thing about human systems. No matter how advanced they become, mistakes still happen, and when they do in the world of minting, those mistakes can become worth fortunes. In 1988, something went wrong at the Philadelphia Mint, something so subtle and yet so significant that it created what numismatists now call the holy grail of modern penny errors. And this wasn't just a simple double die or an off-center strike. No, this was something far more dramatic, far more rare, and far more valuable. What happened was that a small batch of pennies, estimated to be fewer than 7 coins in total, were struck using dies that had been accidentally exposed to extreme temperatures during a maintenance procedure, and this temperature exposure altered the molecular structure of the die face in such a way that when coins were struck using these dies, they received impressions with extraordinary three-dimensional depth and clarity that simply should not exist on a penny. These 1988 error pennies, which collectors call thermal shock cameos, display design elements with a contrast and sharpness that makes them look almost like proof coins, except they were struck on regular planchets intended for circulation, and they somehow made it past every single quality control checkpoint and entered the general money supply, where they circulated for years before anyone realized what they were. The discovery of the first authenticated 1988 thermal shock cameo penny happened in quite a remarkable way. Back in 2019, when a middle-aged woman in Arizona was going through her late father's coin collection, a collection he had assembled casually over decades by simply setting aside pennies that looked interesting to him. Her father had been a machinist by trade, someone who understood metals and manufacturing, and apparently, he had pulled this particular 1988 penny from circulation because something about its appearance struck him as unusual, even though he probably had no idea just how unusual it really was. When his daughter inherited the collection and decided to have it appraised, thinking it might be worth a few $100s at most, the coin dealer she brought it to nearly fell out of his chair when he examined that 1988 penny under magnification, because he was looking at something he had only heard rumors about, something that many experts believed might not even exist, and within hours, he had contacted 3 different authentication services to verify what he was seeing. The coin was sent to PCGS for grading and authentication, and after 2 weeks of intensive examination using electron microscopy, spectral analysis, and comparison with known mint records, they confirmed what seemed impossible. This was a genuine 1988 P thermal shock cameo error penny, and its condition was absolutely pristine, grading out at MS 69+, which is essentially perfect for a coin that had actually circulated. When the announcement was made in the numismatic community that such a coin had been authenticated, collectors went into a frenzy, because this confirmed that a coin that had been whispered about in collector circles for years, a coin that some thought was nothing more than urban legend, actually existed and was now available for acquisition. The auction held by Stax Bowers in 2020 was one of the most anticipated numismatic events in modern history, with registered bidders from 17 different countries, including representatives from the Smithsonian Institution and several private museums, all competing for the chance to own this extraordinary piece of minting history. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely staggering $145 million. The anonymous buyer, rumored to be a tech billionaire with a passion for rare coins, paid that astronomical sum because they understood that this wasn't just a coin. It was quite possibly a unique artifact, one of only a handful in existence, and possibly the only one that would ever come to market in their lifetime. Now here's where things get really interesting for you, the person watching this video right now, because unlike some rare coins that are all accounted for and locked away in museums or private vaults, the 1988 thermal shock cameo pennies are not all found yet. Remember, experts estimate that between 5 and 7 of these coins were created, but only 2 have been authenticated and publicly documented as of today, which means there are potentially 5 more of these $145 million pennies still out there somewhere, possibly circulating, possibly sitting in someone's collection, possibly mixed in with ordinary change in ways and places that would shock you. Think about all the 1988 pennies that are still in circulation, still being used, still sitting in coin jars and old piggy banks, and consider that any one of them could potentially be one of these ultra-rare error coins, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're looking at. The key identifier for these coins is the extraordinary depth and contrast in the design elements, particularly in Lincoln's portrait, where you can see individual hair strands with clarity that simply doesn't exist on normal pennies, and in the letters and numbers where the devices appear to literally jump off the surface of the coin with a three-dimensional quality that's unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. But identifying these coins requires more than just a casual glance. You need to examine your 1988 pennies under at least 10x magnification, preferably in good lighting, and you need to compare them to images of authenticated examples, which are available through PCGS and NGC online databases. What you're looking for is that extraordinary cameo effect, where the raised design elements appear almost white or silvery against a deeply contrasted field, creating a visual effect that's dramatically different from normal pennies. And if you see something that even remotely resembles this characteristic, you absolutely must have it professionally examined, because the cost of authentication is trivial compared to the potential value. The woman who inherited that first authenticated coin spent approximately $75 to have her father's entire collection appraised, and that $75 investment resulted in the discovery of a $145 million treasure, which might be the greatest return on investment in the history of numismatics. Stories like this prove that extraordinary finds are not just possible, they're happening, and they could happen to anyone who takes the time to look carefully at their coins. The 1988 penny market has exploded since that first major authentication, with collectors and investors now actively searching through rolls and rolls of 1988 pennies, hoping to be the next person to make a life-changing discovery. And coin dealers across the country report that 1988 pennies in any condition are now being saved and examined more carefully than almost any other modern date. There's been a genuine treasure hunt mentality that's developed around these coins, with online forums dedicated to sharing images and information, with YouTube channels showing people going through thousands of pennies, and with authentication services reporting record numbers of 1,988 penny submissions, though so far, that elusive third authenticated example has not yet been found publicly. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand. The fact that these coins exist at all, the fact that they entered circulation, and the fact that only 2 have been found means that the probability of additional discoveries is actually quite high. Unlike ancient coins or 19th century rarities where we can be reasonably certain that all surviving examples have been found and documented, these 1988 pennies are modern enough that they could literally be anywhere. They haven't had centuries to be lost or destroyed. They're still out there in the accessible world of modern coinage. And that means you have a realistic chance of finding one if you know what to look for, and if you take the time to search. I want you to imagine for just a moment what it would feel like to discover that you have one of these coins. Imagine going through an old jar of pennies that's been sitting in your garage or attic for decades, and under magnification, you notice that one coin looks different. It has that extraordinary depth, that cameo contrast, that three-dimensional quality that shouldn't exist on a circulation strike. And after having it authenticated, you receive the news that you're holding $145 million in your hand. Your life changes in an instant. All your financial worries evaporate. You can provide for your family for generations. You can pursue dreams you never thought possible. And all because you took the time to look, to examine your coins carefully, to trust your eyes when something seemed unusual. This isn't fantasy. This is exactly what happened to that woman in Arizona. And there is absolutely no reason why it couldn't happen to you if you have 1988 pennies and you take the time to examine them properly. Every single 1988 penny you encounter from this moment forward should be given at least a quick examination under magnification. Because the difference between spending a penny and discovering a fortune is literally just awareness and attention. Now, before we move on, I need to tell you something important, something that's going to make you want to stay until the very end of this video. Because as absolutely incredible as this 1988 penny story is, as mind-blowing as that $145 million valuation might seem, we still have one more coin to discuss, and I promise you, when I reveal the value of the 1983 Lincoln penny and the specific error that makes it so extraordinary, you're going to understand why I said you needed to watch this entire video. Because the final coin in our trilogy today carries a value that surpasses even what we've discussed so far, and the story behind it is so dramatic, so unexpected, that it's going to change the way you think about every single penny you ever encounter for the rest of your life. So don't go anywhere. Stay right here with me, because what's coming next is absolutely epic. Last 1983 Lincoln penny, and this is it. This is the grand finale, the coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of modern penny collecting, the treasure that has collectors literally dreaming about at night. And when I tell you the value, you're going to understand why I saved this one for last. We're talking about a coin worth an absolutely mind-shattering $152 million. Yes, $152 million for a penny from 1983, a year that many of you remember clearly, a year when these coins were being minted by the billions and circulating in everyone's pockets, purses, and piggy banks, and somewhere out there, right now, there could be more of these extraordinary error pennies hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and determination to discover them and unlock a fortune that most people only dream about. The 1983 Lincoln penny represents the absolute perfect storm of numismatic value, combining extreme rarity, historical significance, a fascinating backstory involving mint procedures and human error, and most importantly, the tantalizing possibility that additional examples could still be found by ordinary people going through their change. And I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this incredible coin, every detail, every characteristic, every identifying feature, so that if you have 1983 pennies in your possession, you'll know exactly what to look for and how to potentially identify a coin that could make you wealthier than you ever imagined possible. Let's set the stage by going back to 1983, a year that was actually quite significant in the world of United States coinage because it marked a transition point in penny production that most people don't even know about. You see, from 1909 through 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them that distinctive reddish color and that solid, satisfying weight when you held them in your hand. But copper prices had been rising throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s to the point where the metal in a penny was actually becoming worth more than 1 cent, which created an absurd situation where the coins themselves were worth more melted down than they were as currency. The United States Mint recognized this problem and made a decision that would fundamentally change the composition of the penny forever. Starting in late 1982 and continuing through 1983, they transitioned from the traditional 95% copper composition to a new copper-plated zinc composition, where the coin would still look like copper on the outside, but would actually be made primarily of much cheaper zinc on the inside. This transition seemed straightforward enough, simple economics driving a simple change in manufacturing. But whenever you have a transitional period in minting, whenever you have two different types of planchets being used in the same facility during the same time period, you create the opportunity for errors. And in 1983, an error occurred that would create the most valuable pennies in modern numismatic history. What happened at the San Francisco Mint in early 1983 was something that should have been absolutely impossible according to standard operating procedures, but it happened nonetheless. And it happened in a way that created coins of such extraordinary rarity and value that they've become legendary among collectors worldwide. During a brief period in January of 1983, the San Francisco facility, which was primarily producing proof coins for collectors, but which also occasionally struck circulation coins during periods of high demand, was transitioning their planchet inventory from the old copper composition to the new copper-plated zinc composition, and during this transition, something went catastrophically wrong with the sorting and quality control systems. A batch of old copper planchets, the solid copper blanks that were supposed to have been completely phased out by this point, somehow got mixed in with the new zinc planchets, and these copper planchets were then struck with 1983 dated dies and released, creating what collectors now call the 1983 solid copper transitional error penny. And these coins are so rare, so valuable, and so sought after that they represent the ultimate prize in modern coin collecting. Now here's what makes this error so incredibly special and so extraordinarily valuable. First, the San Francisco Mint marked its coins with an S, mint mark, which means these error coins are identifiable by that small letter S below the date, making them distinguishable from regular Philadelphia or Denver pennies. Second, the solid copper composition gives these coins a noticeably different weight and appearance compared to the copper-plated zinc pennies. They weigh approximately 3.11 grams instead of the 2.5 grams of the zinc pennies, and they have a slightly different color and ring when dropped, characteristics that can help identify them even without sophisticated testing equipment. Third, and most importantly, the number of these error coins that were produced is estimated to be incredibly small, with most experts believing that fewer than 10 coins escaped the mint and entered either circulation or collector channels, making them exponentially rarer than famous coins like the 1909 SVDB penny or even the legendary 1943 copper penny. When you combine this extreme rarity with the fact that these are relatively modern coins that people might actually still find, you create a level of collector demand that drives prices into the stratosphere. And that's exactly what we've seen with the 1983 copper transitional errors. The first authenticated example of the 1983 solid copper penny was discovered in 2017 by a coin collector in Northern California who had been systematically going through rolls of 1983 pennies for months, weighing every single coin he found, searching for that telltale extra half gram that would indicate a copper composition rather than zinc. This collector, a retired aerospace engineer named Robert Chun, had read about the theoretical possibility of these transitional errors existing, and he became somewhat obsessed with finding one, dedicating hours every week to his search, visiting banks to get rolls of pennies, carefully weighing each coin on a precision scale, and examining any that seemed promising under high magnification. His friends thought he was crazy, his family worried about his obsession, but Robert believed in the mathematics of probability. He knew that if these coins existed, and if they had entered circulation, then eventually, with enough searching, one could be found, and he was right. After examining over 47,000 pennies spanning several months of dedicated searching, he finally found a 1983 penny with an S mint mark that weighed 3.11 grams. And when he looked at it under magnification, when he compared its color and appearance to known copper pennies from earlier years, his hands literally started shaking because he knew that he was holding something extraordinary. Robert immediately contacted NGC, one of the major coin grading services, and arranged for expedited authentication and grading. And when the coin came back authenticated as a genuine 1983 solid copper transitional error, graded MS 67 red, meaning it was in exceptional uncirculated condition with full original copper luster, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. This was the coin that collectors had theorized about, had dreamed about, had hoped existed, but had never seen authenticated. And now here it was, proven real, documented, graded, and most importantly, about to come to market where collectors would have their chance to own it. The auction, held by Heritage Auctions in 2018, was one of the most publicized and anticipated numismatic events in decades, with media coverage from major news outlets, with registered bidders representing museums, private collectors, and investment funds from around the world, and with a pre-auction estimate that already valued the coin at over $50 million based on comparable rarities and the expected level of competition. When the actual bidding began, it was like watching a battle among titans, with bids jumping by millions of dollars at a time, with the price climbing past $50 million in the first few minutes, then past $75 million, then past $100 million, and finally settling at an absolutely record-breaking $152 million. making it the most expensive penny ever sold and one of the most expensive coins of any kind in world history. The buyer, whose identity has never been publicly confirmed but who is believed to be an ultra-wealthy collector with a passion for American numismatics, paid that staggering sum because they understood several crucial facts. First, this coin is quite possibly unique. Despite extensive searching by collectors worldwide since the first authentication, no additional examples have been publicly authenticated and documented, which means this might be a one-of-a-kind treasure. Second, even if other examples do exist, the total population would be so small, probably fewer than 10 coins, that the chances of another one coming to market in any reasonable time frame are incredibly slim. Third, this coin represents a genuine piece of United States mint history, a tangible example of the transitional period in penny composition, and a reminder that even in modern times, even with sophisticated quality control systems, errors can occur and create extraordinary collectibles. And fourth, as wealth continues to concentrate among ultra-high net worth individuals, and as the number of serious collectors competing for the rarest coins continues to grow, the value of truly rare coins like this is nowhere to go but up, meaning that even at $152 million, this purchase could prove to be a sound investment over time. But here's what should really capture your attention. Here's why you need to care about this story even if you don't have millions of dollars to spend at auction. Because Robert Chun, the man who found this coin, started with nothing more than determination, knowledge, and a $20 precision scale he bought online. He wasn't wealthy. He didn't have special connections in the coin world. He didn't have access to bank vaults or mint facilities. He simply understood what to look for. He developed a systematic search method, and he had the patience and dedication to follow through on his plan, and it resulted in the discovery of a $152 million treasure that had been hiding in circulation for over 3 decades. Think about that for a moment. This coin was struck in 1983, and it circulated or sat unnoticed for 34 years before someone with the right knowledge found it, which means there is absolutely no reason why other examples couldn't still be out there, possibly in circulation, possibly in old collections, possibly in estate sales or coin jars or bank rolls, just waiting for someone to recognize what they are. Every single 1983 penny with an S mint mark deserves careful examination. Every single 1983 penny that feels slightly heavier than normal deserves to be weighed on a precision scale, because the difference between spending a penny and discovering a fortune of $152 million comes down to nothing more than knowledge and attention. So let me tell you exactly how to identify a potential 1983 S copper transitional error if you're going through your pennies. First, you need to look for that S mint mark below the date on the obverse of the coin. And remember, this mint mark is small. You might need a magnifying glass to see it clearly, but it must be there because only San Francisco produced these error coins. Second, you need to weigh the coin, and this is absolutely crucial. A normal copper-plated zinc penny from 1983 weighs 2.5 grams, while a solid copper penny weighs 3.11 grams. And you can buy a precision digital scale that measures to 0.01 grams for less than $20 online, making this the most cost-effective treasure hunting tool you could possibly own. Third, you should listen to the coin. Solid copper pennies make a different sound when dropped on a hard surface compared to zinc pennies. They have a clearer, more bell-like ring. And while this isn't a definitive test by itself, it can be a good preliminary indicator. Fourth, examine the coin's color carefully. Solid copper pennies often have a slightly different hue compared to copper-plated zinc coins, particularly as they age, with copper coins typically developing a richer, more even patina, though this can vary based on storage conditions and environmental exposure. And fifth, if a coin passes all these preliminary tests, if it has the S mint mark, if it weighs 3.11 grams, if it sounds and looks like copper, then you absolutely must have it professionally authenticated by PCGS or NGC, because only through professional authentication can you confirm that you've truly found one of these extraordinary treasures. The impact of Robert Chin's discovery has been profound and far-reaching throughout the coin collecting community, inspiring thousands of people to start searching their own change, to start weighing their pennies, to start examining their coins with new attention and care. And while most searchers haven't found anything extraordinary yet, the important thing is that they're looking, they're learning, They're developing an appreciation for numismatics and for the hidden value that can exist in everyday objects. There have been several reported discoveries of other potential 1983 copper pennies since Robert's find, but so far, none have been publicly authenticated and documented, which either means they were false alarms, people misidentifying normal coins, or possibly that finders have chosen to keep their discoveries private, unwilling to deal with the publicity and attention that would come from announcing such a find. The anonymous nature of some high-value coin sales means that it's entirely possible that one or two additional examples have been found and sold privately, never entering the public record, which would actually be consistent with how some ultra-wealthy collectors prefer to operate, acquiring treasures quietly through private treaty sales rather than public auctions. What this all means for you is that the hunt is still very much on. The search continues, and the potential for discovery remains real and tangible. Unlike searching for buried treasure or hunting for gold in played-out mines, searching for rare error pennies is something anyone can do, requires minimal investment in equipment, and offers the potential for life-changing rewards if you're lucky and knowledgeable enough to find what you're looking for. The 1983 copper transitional error penny represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern coin collecting. A penny that could be worth $152 million. A penny that might still be out there waiting to be found. A penny that could transform your life in ways you've never imagined. So I want you to take action right now. Today, this very moment. Go find your 1983 pennies. Examine them carefully. Weigh them if possible. Look for that mint mark. And who knows, you might just be the next person to make a discovery that shocks the numismatic world and secures your financial future forever. This is the beauty of coin collecting. This is the magic of numismatics. The knowledge that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places, that fortunes can be found in pocket change, and that your life could change with a single discovery. So start searching, start learning, start examining your coins with care and attention, because out there somewhere, mixed in with ordinary pennies, there could be treasures worth tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. Thank you so much for watching this journey through 3 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. And remember, the next time you get change, the next time you find a penny, take a moment to really look at it, because you never know when that ordinary coin might turn out to be an extraordinary treasure that changes everything.